the target?
Yeah.
Is it that just everyone?
Yeah.
Or how do you go about this?
It's interesting you mentioned that, Safin, because one of the key things that we say, our primary focus first is working with the community. The community already understands who the vulnerable and the needy are within the community itself. So as Habitat, we will not go in as pick those individuals, but we'll first work with ensuring that within the areas that we work with, there's a community that is formed. And that community then comes together and then helps to work together using the laid out criteria that even the government has to actually help to identify who the vulnerable are, who there could be, for example, people living with disability. There could be child-led households. There could be women-led or women-led households. And in a sense, that community then goes in and actually identifies using the laid down criteria that the government even at times uses to actually help to identify for the social welfare. And then we then come in as Habitat for Humanity to validate, to ensure that then there's no, favoritism that is happening within the community. And then we ensure that the person then who is identified as that who needs to get a house built is truly actually somebody who deserves it and truly is a person who then is within the vulnerable community that we're trying to choose.
How has that strategy worked for the 4 decades you've been doing this? Any milestones or any success story, something that you'd say is worth emulating? Because right now we're in that era of really advocating for the affordable housing, agenda of the government. I know there's a lot that has been said around this issue, but we are trying to get it right. And we would appreciate lessons, borrowing from your experience. What would you say are some of the things that probably has worked or successes that you can write home about?
Yeah, so when you think about it, Safin, and like I said, looking at it even from a holistic perspective, over the number of years that Habitat for Humanity has existed in Kenya, I think we have managed to impact lives of over 3 million people. And when I talk about the impact, it's not the houses just being constructed. It's impact through the houses that, so in terms of actual construction, we've done slightly over 100,000 units. But beyond that, the 3 million comes through empowering people to know about issues around land rights, for example, so ensuring that they actually also have access to the land that they are sitting on. So through advocacy, for example, also through water and sanitation. And also through community empowerment, the financial literacy programs, but also being able to build things like, supporting building things like schools, so ensuring that children also have access to education. So we do know that, one, we have impacted the number, but that feels like a drop in the ocean when you think about the housing deficit. And so that is why we are saying, we know that issues like health, for example, I heard you just talking about maternal health before the program started. So issues like health are at the forefront. Issues like economic empowerment are at the forefront. But housing is always looked like as a secondary thing. But from what we have seen and from research that we have done is the fact that when you have a home, it impacts different areas of your life. Not only does it help you, like in schools, for example, I'll give you an example of partners that have actually built schools in Kibera. You'll go in there and you'll find children telling you, I'm actually encouraged to go to school just because of the structure of the school. So it's no longer the, like Mabati structure that was there before, but it's actually a building that I can go in, sit in comfortably and be happy that I'm here in school. Is the feeding programs that we have actually partnered with the county government to deliver in some of the counties that we work in. So we have seen milestones over the years, but what we are saying is that we need to come together. We need to come together as a Kenyan community to be able to support this issue, not just affordable housing, but housing also for the vulnerable communities. Because at the end of the day, it's the vulnerable communities that are actually the biggest population. It's actually the people living below the poverty line, for example. Even in the informal settlements, Kibera, Mukuru, you find that the numbers are huge. But what we are also saying is that, from our experience, the communities that you think are actually vulnerable, when they are empowered, you can see a lot of difference that it makes.
A very good example, actually, is we have about 430 self-help groups across the country. And I could cite out one like Rumkandu in Rumuruti, in Laikipia. where 400 people have come together and within the last 2 years actually raised almost 4.5 million. And with that, they were able to buy 50 acres of land. And with those 50 acres of land, they've now actually been able to subdivide. And us as Habitat for Humanity is working alongside Laikipia County government to ensure that we are developing a master plan and helping them actually start off more or less using the Rimkundi Housing Cooperative, sort of like a scheme, what we are calling a green village, where we'll actually have the communities actually develop more or less prototype. We've actually developed a prototype type house that they'll actually replicate and be able to develop within that section that they have in Rimuruti. And so that's actually just citing just one of the examples in terms of work that we have done and with the community. A very good also example that we've actually also had with some of the impact we've had is that recently we've worked alongside the Tana River County government to actually come up with 15 typologies of different houses that the community can actually use to actually develop. And these are low-cost housings costing about 150,000 that actually can actually come in and they can actually build as more or less first temporary structures, and then with time have the incremental growth and then be able to actually, and the reason we've done that with the Tana River, we always are aware that with every rainfall, there's a big flooding of the Tana River, and then people have to relocate to higher ground. And so what was very exciting is that with these 15 different typologies, now people are really seeing the type of houses built out of materials from within the region that they can actually adapt and actually use that as a preference to build. And the government is now, the Tana River County government is using that to encourage the team to move from the flooded prone areas now to the higher ground and use those different typologies to actually build different structures. And so as Habitat, we've worked very closely with different county governments, and we're actually then using those as tools just to demonstrate to the community that using these sort of like models, either community-driven models, and using these other aspects, as Carol has said, the sweet equity, and actually bringing in combination with professionals, because we have also associations with the Architectural Association of Kenya and other different professionals who we are working closely with to ensure that we are more or less bring in the community, giving them that professional touch, and driving the cost of the initial housing structure. So you'll be surprised that when you say the average cost of a house is 3 million, as Habitat.
That is what excited me when you said 150,000. And I was like, okay, earlier we were approximating an average cost of a house, it was 3.7 million, and it could go higher, that's what you said. And when you said 150,000, I was like, oh, what are these houses looking like? And Carol, in terms of how do they look like? Like, just take us through.
Maybe just to mention, as a correction, the average house that we do as Habitat for Humanity costs about 850,000.
Okay.
So you can see it's way below
what
in terms of what the average market housing would be. And basically, the reason it is actually at 850,000 because of the fact that we say, as Habitat for Humanity, we are trying to ensure first we use local labor. In addition to local labor, we're also using local materials that are readily available within the community that they actually work. So you'll find that some of the materials we use what we call ISSB, inter-soil stabilizing blocks, where you just use material, the soils, and use different technologies to cause it to stabilize and use that as basic building materials to actually build the housing. We've also engaged other players who have brought in new technologies. For example, we have an organization called ICF, On-Site ICF, which actually has more or less it's full of like a styrofoam. It's like they actually where they can actually stack up. It's where they have they can actually stack up materials and use that as the basic foundation for the wall. We've also worked with other players in the market who are even looking at recycled plastic as a basic
to bring down
in the cost. So as Habitat, our constant goal is to kind of see how do we work with the industry players to bring in innovation to drive down that cost, and as a result be able to use that as materials that then would actually contribute towards lowering the cost and giving people access to decent housing.
Just out of curiosity, how does this house look like? The basic.
Yeah.
So the basic house has a living room, has a kitchen, has a bedroom. It's got also, in some places, a water harvesting system, but it's also got the water and sanitation facilities, so a bathroom, a toilet, and in some spaces you find that we would build those outside because of the nature of the toilet that we would put in there. So maybe a latrine, for example. But it's got rooms that the family can actually use. It's got water and sanitation services. It's got access to fresh water and even water harvesting facilities. Right. And an interesting part about it is that, just like Anthony was mentioning, Safin, is that partnering with the county governments has worked really well for us. We currently in Kenya have got memorandum of understanding with different counties. So like Laikipia County, Homa Bay County, Machakos County, just to mention a few. So with this kind of memorandum of understanding that we have with the counties, we know then that there is commitment. So even as we empower the communities, the issue around owning that title, being able to even begin that construction process, they actually make it easier for us. We've had places where we've had county governments even coming in to contribute land. And so we know that this is actually a vulnerable community living within this settlement. So we are going to contribute this amount of land. So work with us to see how we can then get other players to put up houses.
So it's something we cannot do in one day, right? Yes. Just achieving a solution to the housing deficit that we have in the country. We cannot do it in one day. It's progressive.
Yeah.
And I'm also looking at it as a problem that needs a multi-sectorial approach to it. Anthony, you get the final word. Yeah. Just tell us, going forward, or what sort of partnerships or collaborations are needed to really address this crisis that we are currently facing? What can government do? Yeah. What can the private sector do? The businesses, individuals who could be watching this show and they want to be part of this. Yeah, what do we do to make this a reality for vulnerable populations?
Well, great. It's interesting you say that, because we think that everybody can play a role, because as you said, it's a multifaceted approach. And we feel that as corporates could actually team up and come in and actually use a house as an opportunity for their staff to come in and provide sweat equity in terms of coming together, coming in to build. We can actually have even corporates contributing in kind, in terms of even it's not resources, it could be even materials. It could be also individuals coming in and volunteering of their time. We said one of the things that we know that labor costs actually attribute almost 30% of the cost of the housing. And so you can imagine by the time people come in and volunteer of their time, we're able to reduce that significantly, the cost of land. And so we say that there's so much that everybody can come in and contribute. So as corporates, they could come in and either contribute financially, either support a house for a vulnerable family. They could also come in and also contribute as their staff coming together to build in terms of team building or in terms of just giving back to the community. And then also there are some corporates where we say they could actually give in terms of in-kind, in terms of materials.
All right.
And so we are excited to actually reach out and have them to come in and partner with us.
Thank you so much. Anthony Okoth is the National Director, Habitat for Humanity Kenya. I've learned something, sweat equity. I mean, all of us have something to put on the table. So
exactly.
It could be money, it could be sweat equity. Yeah. So think about what you can do in all the aspects of your life. But today we were talking about housing and the housing crisis in the country. I was hosting Anthony Okoth, the National Director, Habitat for Humanity Kenya, and also Caroline Nyamamu, the Communications Director for Africa for Habitat for Humanity International. Thank you so much for creating time for us this morning.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
All right.
Really
Coming up, I'll be bringing you the health conversation. We are talking about maternal health, the progress we are making as a country, the gaps, and what we also need to do to be able to save our mothers and our children. That conversation coming in just a bit. Don't go too far.